You're listening to Games from the Cellar, where we play board games and then talk about them. I'm Steven, your host, and tonight I was joined by John, Chris, and Sam to play Imperial Settlers. And because here at Games from the Cellar we like to get designers and publishers' names right whenever possible, I've enlisted the aid of my wife, who can pronounce pretty much everything. So, honey, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Imperial Settlers, designed by Ignacy Trzewiczek, was first published by Portal Games in 2014. It was nominated for several Board Game Geek Awards, including Best Two-Player Board Game, Best Board Game Artwork and Presentation, Best Card Game, Best Solo Board Game, Best Strategy Board Game, and Board Game of the Year. Imperial Settlers also won the Polish Game of the Year. At the time of this recording, Imperial Settlers has a 7.3 rating with 23,000 ratings on Board Game Geek and has a ranking of 278. It is a 1 to 4 player medium complexity game that should play in about 60 to 90 minutes.
Excellent job, honey.
Thanks, honey.
Thank you for joining us in the cellar as we go in depth with Imperial Settlers. So in front of us is Imperial Settlers. We looked it up, and I think the last time we played was 2017. Does that ring a bell for everybody?
Yes.
Does that seem familiar?
I'm thinking 2018.
Okay.
I could have sworn it was more recently than that, but yes, I remember this game.
It was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
in the before times.
Oh, in the before times for sure. So we've played this. I've played this at least a half dozen times, and I've made it through all the base factions and a couple of the expansion factions. Chris, do you have any specific recollection of how any of these games have gone for you? Because I know you've played a few times with me.
I think I've played it 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And every time somebody said Imperial Settlers, kind of something went off in the back of my head, said, what about Splendor? What about Wings for the Baron or something? It didn't have... The last time I played this game, there was somebody that was... what's the word you would use for it, where they just kept on going and going. Their turns took like 3 times as long as everybody else's, and they were able to do so much more.
And so that's usually you.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, that's
sure
usually,
that wasn't you?
That's usually Samuel.
You got out Chris'd by Noah. I remember that game. And yeah, he had a lot of extra actions that we didn't have.
And they just kept going.
It was questionable whether they were actually legitimate actions, but
So my last time that I played this game, it wasn't the greatest experience. It hasn't fully clicked for me, and with it being 5 years since we last played it, I'm looking forward. I'm giving it a fresh start.
Okay, yeah. I think after that amount of time, you can actually kind of do that.
Yeah, I remember the pieces, and that's about it. I know I've played it before.
Okay. Do you remember anything, John?
Just little bits and pieces. Okay. I know the last couple of times we played, I played the Japanese faction, which is supposedly a little bit harder to play. And when you mentioned that, I said, okay, let me play it. Next couple of times we play it, let me play the Japanese so that maybe I can start getting the hang of them. And the last time we played, I did okay. And this is not a game that my brain kind of wraps itself around so well. So I was kind of pleased that I did okay. I was in shooting distance of the lead, and that was fine with me. But I remember wanting to come back to this one. This one and 51st State, which is the game that this was the progenitor to this, correct?
Yeah.
So I enjoyed 51st State, and I enjoyed Imperial Settlers, and I'm very happy that we're finally getting back to this. I think I asked you about this maybe 6 or 8 months back, and you kind of said, yeah, we can get that back out on the table again. So that's finally happening tonight. I'm kind of happy to see that happen and see if maybe this gets back into our normal rotation again.
Yeah, I always enjoyed this one. There's something that is not only relaxing, but it's an engine builder in its essence, because you're playing down the cards to be able to do things more efficiently than you were before. It's a tableau builder, kind of like Race for the Galaxy in that way. You're playing down cards on either side of your little board, and they give you actions, and they compile upon each other and allow you to do really cool things. Samuel, when was the last time you played it? It was with us, right?
Yeah, probably. I don't remember specifically. It's been a while, probably about the same time frame as Chris or John. I'm not sure who else would have played this with.
I know we played with your brother. That's what Chris is referencing.
I think I've played more recently than that, but I wouldn't put money on it.
Okay. So Imperial Settlers, I'll give the explanation since I think I'm the more familiar, and
This is your game,
this
right?
is my game. So essentially, what we have is each player's got his or her own deck. So there's only guys here, so I'm just going to say his from here on out. We each have our own deck that matches the faction that we're playing. So I have a deck that has Japanese cards. Chris has a deck that has barbarian cards. John has the Romans, and Samuel's playing the Egyptians. We all chose randomly. Samuel thought that he could choose for himself, so that might be an advantage to him. We'll find out.
Steven normally plays the barbarians, so I was happy to take the barbarians because I'm not attached to any of the four.
I didn't intend for you guys to pick randomly. I showed
Passing
Steven
them around.
the three, and he picked one, and it went from there.
Yeah. So anyway, so essentially, it's very similar to 51st State in that you take cards and you're playing them onto either side of your board, depending on what kind of card it is. The difference is in 51st State, you only have a common deck. So there's not this built-in asymmetry in 51st State. And I think because of that, we kind of discussed that this is a proto or like an early asymmetric game. I think because of that, I feel like I enjoy this game a lot more because of that. So it's got really cool little wooden meeples and cardboard cutouts. So it's not like too overblown in production, but it's done just enough to kind of give you the feel for the resources and the little chits that you're going to move around as you play the game. Anyone have anything else they would like to say before we get to playing? Go ahead.
I do. I really like, you mentioned the meeples and the little cardboard cutouts. My favorite thing about this game is the art.
Mm-hmm.
On all of the cards, for each faction, there's this really nice, cute art of the different factions and just little people. Like I'm looking at a card of an oasis, and there's little people, dressed in Egyptian clothing doing things at an oasis. And I look at the card of a sphinx, and there's like a cartoonish sphinx with Egyptian armies rallied around it, and these little cute people. You can tell what they are, but they're mostly head and torso. I really like it. I think it brings each and every card to life, and they're always fun to look at. There's like one of the Egyptian cards has aliens showing up. It's just fun. I like it.
So what do you figure this was? $39.99, $49.99 back in 2014?
Yeah, I think it retailed for $49, and then each of so there's deck expansions and then there's factions expansions. And I believe the faction expansions were probably in the $25 area, and the deck expansions were probably in the $15 area.
So this was a reasonably affordable game at the time.
Yeah, and
I mean it's still for sale.
It's still
buy it in games and stuff all the time.
Oh,
yeah,
all right.
So it's still available, and I believe there might be one or two more expansions that I haven't picked up because it's not something we've been playing.
Yeah.
But for a time there, I would keep an eye on the developer blogs and on BGG just to see when the new faction was coming because, this was a game that I really enjoyed. And when we were playing it, I had a really good time with it. So I'm hoping that we have a really good time with it this time and we can bring it into rotation.
I remember enjoying this game. This above all other games really strikes me as just as things are getting good, the game's over.
Yeah, and many engine builders, many Euro-type engine builders have that.
I know it's a common feeling, but I distinctly remember this game is where I feel that the most.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're probably about 45 minutes away from finding out if that's the case again.
Oh, yeah.
All right, cool. So let's give it a shot, and we'll be right back. All right, Imperial Settlers is it's done.
11 o'clock.
Took it a little while.
Oh my gosh, it took so long.
Expedited 5th round.
We didn't even finish. I mean,
we kind of saw the writing on the wall and figured out what the last round was going to be.
Hail to the Egyptians.
Yeah, I looked back at our point spreads, and the Egyptians do seem to score higher than the other factions, but the scores this game were a little bit lower than they've been in the past. So I don't know if that's just us being rusty and not really remembering the cards and how they interacted with each other. But
I mean, I think we also probably would have scored a little higher if we'd actually
if we played
out the last round. I think we probably would have scored a little higher.
Yeah, but I don't think it would.
And
the 50-point difference was kind of.
And also, I think half the table didn't realize that you got the resources when you built a production building and not just in the production phase. So I missed out on a whole turn of when I built a whole bunch of production buildings. I think Chris did too.
Yeah, but I'm not feeling too hard for you because it's too bad for you.
Well, I'm not saying like, oh, what was me?
It didn't really impact you because you got that one card at the beginning that allowed you to store stuff, and the next time, wow, it multiplies.
Yeah. No, I'm just pointing out, Chris. I mean, Stephen was busy pointing out that
it's like a breeding pit for resources.
The top score for the Egyptians was like
120.
120.
Historically,
50 points more than I managed. So I'm like, well, if you.
Yeah, I was surprised as the barbarians that I was only able to. I got up to 2 swords at one time. That I was
surprised.
I would hope that there would be more.
I could have. I mean,
so the barbarians are more about just generating a lot of people.
They definitely generated a lot of people.
And we looked over at the last round. And you had this, in the 4th round, you had this line of people.
Yeah, was it
you had
12
or 13 people?
It was more
people.
than that because I got 5, and I got 5 from my deals.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
another 5.
And
so it was about 15 to 16.
I do like that each empire has its own distinct feeling, right? The barbarians get a lot of people. The Egyptians get a lot of gold, and they can kind of multiply resources. But I never saw food production, or even really much.
Nobody had food production, right?
I had some.
No, I had none.
I had some via deals, but that was it.
I never even saw one.
I had none. Period. I had
straight food. The Japanese seemed like they really wanted you to invest, put resources under your cards to score points.
I had one card that did that.
Well, I'm counting the samurai.
I had a lot of abilities that made my buildings stronger as far as getting attacked, because my faction buildings could be attacked, and then on top of that, they're also worth a point for everyone else. So I kind of had a weird target painted on my back that nobody really utilized, thankfully.
I guess we didn't really realize, but there just weren't a lot of swords out there.
Yeah.
I didn't feel the need to target you.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a weird.
I felt very targeted.
When I played the Japanese, I was targeted as well. I played Rome this time, and nothing was coming. I don't think you guys bothered looking at my.
I mean, I was keeping
board.
track of what you were doing, but you didn't ever seem to get anything going. So I was like, well,
yeah.
And you didn't have any production or anything. You and every time you put out a building, you built something on top of it that couldn't be destroyed.
Right. So it moved it over to be a faction building, which can't be destroyed. So when it comes right down to it, I don't know. I enjoy these games, but I'm clearly not very good at them. I don't have the two things. First of all, I just don't think my brain is wrapping around when the rules get that complicated. You mentioned before we started, Sam, this game gets rolling just about the time that it ends. And today I'm like, oh no, there's so much going on. Everybody's doing a million things.
I did not get that feeling this time. There was a lot going on, and I'm not sure what the difference was. It felt faster than other times than when I've played before.
I think I was ready for the game to be over after round 3.
Yeah, what felt faster?
His build up.
It didn't.
The build up.
How quickly you build.
Yeah, it suddenly felt like I was just like, okay, well now I've got.
Because I looked up and I'm like, holy guacamole! You've got 3 times the buildings I have. And Chris, you were in that position too, and I'm like, I mean, I was even having you guys coach me, and I'm like, is it just maybe the Romans just don't work that way, or
but you built on top of everything you put down. You built on top of, so you think,
which is what he should have been doing.
Which is fine because all the Romans did that way, but that's why he didn't have as many buildings.
Well, part of it also was Chris and I both had card draw. We both had castles. Chris for a while had 2 castles.
Yeah, I never saw that in
John
my deck.
never really got a good way of generating cards, so his options were a little more limited.
Yeah, I had a couple in my deals so that I could pull some cards. Yeah. But that was really the only way. And every single faction building that I wanted to build had to be built on top of a foundation. Mm-hmm. So I had to eat a foundation every single time. And I got 1 ruins, which of course you get to build for free, which is nice. But after that, it's like, nope, I gotta eat real buildings. So you're getting 2 stars for the faction buildings, but you're eating 1 star doing it, so you don't generate a whole lot of points that way. So,
yeah, the Japanese they got around the foundation problem a lot in very creative ways. So I wasn't destroying as many of my common buildings as everyone else was having to.
And I didn't have any problem because people kept on destroying my buildings.
Yeah, we kept providing.
I'm the barbarian. I was supposed to be doing the raiding.
Yeah. We kept providing you with the foundations.
5 buildings.
Chris,
we were
that were
vandalizing
Chris,
the vandals.
do you know why you were playing as the barbarians? Because your civilization didn't last long enough to get a cool name.
Well, so
I mean, yeah. Frankly, as Egypt, I just had so many resources. I didn't have a foundation problem. I was building every card in my hand
and keeping all your resources turn to turn.
Yeah, like
and you just had this massive
not
pile of
spend
stuff.
all.
Confident that you can build the same building over and over again.
I looked through the rule book the entire time we were playing, the entire 2 hours that we played.
I saw Sam had his hands on the
and
rule book for a little while.
I could not find it anywhere in the rules, in the base game rules, or the "Why can't we be friends" rules, that said that you cannot build duplicate buildings.
I know we've played other games where that's a rule. I
feel like in the
here.
past we've played it that way, that you can't build duplicates.
Yeah, I feel like we have too.
At the same time, like I sit there and I think about,
I
don't know how often that came up.
Well, you had 2 or 3 pyramids. But
Yeah,
what are you
3
supposed to
pyramids
do?
built all 3 pyramids.
But what are you supposed to do? Throw them away?
I guess
If
turn
you're
them
not
into
allowed to-
deals. They're worth a gold.
I suppose you could do that.
And I mean, I guess it's there for, to help you get them quicker because you have a limited deck. And if you only have 1, then you have a 1 in 40 shot of getting it. But if you have 3, you've got a 3 in 40 shot of getting 1. That's the only, and then, using them for deals, that's really the only reason. I don't know. It felt thematically wrong, but at the same time, it felt thematically like, okay, I can justify this in my head as to why I can build multiple buildings of the same type.
Especially since there are actually multiple pyramids. But I ran into the same thing. I had some duplicate buildings, but they weren't stunners. I can't. And none of my buildings. The only thing I had rolling for me at the end was I had buildings that says, hey, place a resource and a guy on this, and you get 2 points. Mm-hmm. So I could churn up some points at the end, and some of those I could use twice. So if I'd gotten those out relatively early, I could have been doing that for say 3 turns each, and then at that point I might have been able to do some generation. But it just didn't seem to roll as much. And I'll be honest with you, and I don't want to sound like a whiner, but in a game like this, you need to be looking at other people's stuff. And between my eyesight and my brain after a day of work, I don't have the get up and go to be up and leaning over and looking at everybody's stuff, because I really, and it's the small print, I really need to be reading close up in order to see what's going on.
And luckily, we've played together enough, and there's no money at stake. There's nothing,
right?
Nothing like that. So I can ask Chris, hey, I'm going to blow up one of your buildings.
Yeah, what do you got that gives me
This is
food?
what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Tell me which one of your buildings is best for me to blow up.
Right.
And, we do that because we all, aside from Sam,
What?
we're all old-ish.
Okay.
But when I say, hey, can I use can you blow up the one? You can see that.
Yeah.
When I ask the question, can you blow up the one that I've already used? And you go, no, the other one.
I mean, see, I can't. Like,
Well, we're not that friendly.
in that instance, like looking at the board state at that point, it looked to me like you were in the lead. Oh my
gosh.
Compared to me,
It's just-
Sam's not even playing the same game we are sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
So-
just Chris had all those. It felt like you had 2 swords really early, and so you were the one.
I made a deal to get a sword. I was planning on using my
and
swords, and I could not get any more.
You made it clear. You're like, I'm going to blow up other people's buildings,
Okay.
and you did.
How many times did I blow up people's buildings?
I don't know. I'm just
You
pretty
blew up
sure
a
you
couple
did.
of
I'm
mine.
pretty sure you
None
did
of
it at
mine.
least once.
It was the volcano that did that to you.
Oh, right, the volcano that you
and I
totally
did it once
didn't point
to
at
you.
me.
So
You
I
did it twice to me.
No, I did once.
Well, when you have a commanding lead, you got to kind of.
You're right, I did
expect,
do it twice,
It's the
sorry.
memory effect.
I'm
You're
not
going
sour.
to draw fire.
Yeah, I'm not sour. The fact of the matter is, I intentionally didn't bother building a bunch of common stuff because I figured anything that was valuable there
It's
would get
gonna
blown up.
nuked. Yeah.
And I'm shocked that you guys didn't blow up my gold generating card for the entire game.
Weren't the pyramids making you money too? I mean, you
Yeah,
were making
but-
But
so much
diagonally
stinking
across
money.
the table from me, I had no clue you
But
had one building that was generating all your gold.
It was generating gold for me on turn 2, and you left it alone. I didn't get the pyramids out until turn 4.
I was trying to figure out how to get more swords.
I'm just saying. I was surprised. And as far as like paying attention to what other people have and paying interacting with them that way, I mean, I blew up a couple buildings that gave cards because I needed more cards. But I
probably should have just raised once in my hand, and
I actually intentionally avoided building playing some cards that were all about benefiting from other people's cards. All right, I had one that was like, just take over the enemy's building for a round. It's yours. Use it however you want. I was like, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to be bothered to look at Steven's cards.
There's a little bit of overhead there that didn't seem worth it.
And that's the part that I don't get into either. And I don't know, maybe it's just because I got a 58-year-old brain in my head that it's.
Well, some cards are complicated for complicated sake.
At some point, and so one of the points I kind of bookmarked to make sure I make. This is truly a gamer's game. This is a game you don't stand a snowball's chance of introducing to somebody that is not neck deep in the hobby because of all the 32 moving pieces, and you need to order it right. And if you do it this way and do it that way, and all that kind of stuff, this is not an accessible game. I mean, for hobby board gamers, that's great. All right, you can dig into this, but this is way down the line of games you introduce to somebody who even has a keen interest in the hobby until they've got a whole lot of experience under their belt.
And I disagree to a point because I think like the game itself and the actions that you can take and the way that you manipulate things is pretty simple.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's just how it all interacts with each other.
There's a lot of emergent complexity here.
It's right. It is all about the timing of everything in order to make all those pieces work. And frankly, they aren't the most intuitive. There's no real solid metaphors here for real life. No.
See, I disagree. I think it's a very straightforward game.
I think really the one thing that would have made this an easier play is a little bit larger text on the abilities. Yeah. Because then we would have been a little more engaged with what was going on across the table.
Yeah, there was not a chance. I mean, we kept on having to ask, hey, what do you got? And it's like, oh, Chris is looking at blowing this up, so maybe I'll just blow up something of his. Or
So right now I'm also do bird watching stuff, and I'm talking to a group about Wingspan of non-gamers that have gotten a copy of Wingspan as a gift.
Because they're bird watchers.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And there's like 5 or 6 people in this thread, and it's not like this is some huge bird watching thing. This is kind of a sidebar on a different kind of website. And I'm trying to explain to them the basics of the game, and they are just snowed over by the rule set in Wingspan. Now compare the rule set in Wingspan to the rule set in Imperial Settlers. Yeah. And you're talking a factor of 10 as far as permutation and complexity. All right, you're right. Every single rule here is a onesie. Mm-hmm. But when you're on onesie number 37 and you got to get all of those in the right order, that's real complexity. All right, and this is not a game you're going to be able to bring out. Yeah. Now, the audience, people listen to us, they play complicated games, and I can appreciate that. And, I it's not that I had a bad time playing it. I'm just not in the league that you guys were. I mean, I think I was in earshot of your score, Stephen. You two were just way out and around. Sam, you almost looped me on the track.
I was about 15 points off.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just it's a more challenging game. And,
I look at it from when we completed the first round. So, you had. I mean, the first round took like 10 minutes. I'm sitting here thinking, I remember this game. It's fun. This is great. Yeah. And then each round got progressively longer.
Exponentially longer.
So, like,
that's what I'm saying.
Fourth round,
and
I
doubled.
was done.
Yeah.
But, just looking at that first round, like, it was really simple. It was a good time, It was
and
it was real happy do, and we were like, all right, cool. I remember how this works now.
If you had 4 or 5 turns that were the complexity of, say, turn 2, then I think that would be a meaty enough game to be interesting, and at the same time not be such a challenge.
I agree. Frankly, I won, but my board state was out of control.
Yeah.
Right? Like I hit exponential growth somewhere around turn 3 where I just started generating more resources than I could spend.
Yeah. And the way this game works, you can spend them as long as you figure out the right 19 steps to take in order to convert everything into what you need to convert it into.
Right? I enjoy putting together that. I enjoyed putting together the engine. I enjoyed seeing it do stuff.
That's why you belong in project management, Sam.
But by turn 5, I wasn't really enjoying myself.
Yeah,
I was like, this is unwieldy. This is boring for the other people at the table.
Work.
And that bothers me, right? Like, I enjoy a game where everybody's engaged with it, but I knew, like, on my turn, I'm just going to do a thing, and I'm going to keep going for another, 10 turns.
10, 15 minutes, yeah.
And it's going to be boring for you, and I feel bad about that, but I'm not going to be like, all right, I'm going to just stop scoring because...
I appreciate you. You're in a pickle. I mean, you're in a kind of a jam.
But, I mean, it's just not fun for me either, right? Because it's I don't want to spend that much brain power to eke out a little bit more competitive juice out of the... It's just not interesting for anybody involved.
Okay, so what is the recommended age for this game? And what is the...
10 plus.
And what is the expected time to play?
45 to 90 minutes.
Okay, so...
I mean, we butted right up against that 90 minutes.
No, we didn't.
It's 11 o'clock.
It's
11 o'clock. We started...
To be fair, it took us a while to get everything resorted because...
Okay, but we started at 8.
The box was a little bit of a mess.
That's 3 hours.
I think we started a little later than 8, but... Okay.
So 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours, we'll call it.
Okay.
I mean, now, I do think part of it is just we take a long time to play games.
And I appreciate you could probably put this game down in front of a 10-year-old and he could play it because, I said, every little piece is tiny.
Well, part of it also
is... being able to really wring it out, I mean, wow.
Well, sure. Sorry.
Well, I'm curious, too. You've got several game logs of this.
Mm-hmm.
How many would you say the Egyptians have won? How many of the Romans won? How many of the barbarians?
You want to talk about if the factions are balanced?
Yeah, I don't feel like they're balanced.
Frankly, I don't think thinking back, I don't know if I've ever seen the Romans take off. I don't know what the Roman engine looks like. I know what the barbarian engine looks like. I know what the Egyptian engine looks like. I kind of know what the Japanese engine looks like. I don't know what the Roman one looks like. Something to do with swords, I guess?
All right, so I have 4 factions logged, or 4 games with factions logged. The Egyptians have won 3 of those. The barbarians won once.
Okay. Yeah, the barbarians was the one with Noah.
So that's not a broad pool of games.
And the barbarians was you, Chris, where you were in the neighborhood. You had a shot.
I came in 3rd. Stephen beat me.
I was 2nd.
With the Japanese.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, so I was in shooting range of you, not Steve. Oh, wow.
So part of it also is when it has a suggested age on the box, it's more about the pieces themselves than it is the complexity of the game.
Be 10 years or older to not choke and die.
Swallow.
It's all about the choking hazards.
I mean,
I think with the barbarians, it was nice that they were getting lots of people, but I could trade 2 for 1. He was producing gold, and that's a 1
and
for
that's
1
a 1
when
for
you're
1.
building stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you need different things for. I mean, they're 2 for 1 for the people and 1 for 1 for gold, but you need people to activate buildings, and so I mean, it kind of can go both ways.
But all the things that need gold points was
gold
a person and a stone, a person and a wood. You get a couple victory points. It's like I wasn't producing the wood and the stone to be able to feed that machine.
That's where I was too. I was having to do 2 for 1s to do anything into my deals or anything else, and I think that because I'm like, okay, I got to get some deals up because I don't get stuff.
I think part of that is that I went really deep into my faction deck. You guys, I feel like,
I was trying
put a lot of card draw into the commons. It seemed like you guys built a lot of common cards.
Yeah, because I needed to raise them for resources.
Yeah, I have to build on a common
even
card.
From the very beginning, I just went, nope, I'm going into the faction deck because that's where the cool cards are.
Yeah, but you can build without having a building there.
No.
Some of them.
But a lot of them, every single one of my cards needs to have. I need to nuke a common card.
I covered up a decent number of faction buildings, just because I liked the next faction building better.
Yeah.
I think I went pretty good into my barbarian deck.
And I'll be honest, I don't mind if the factions are unbalanced as long as you know coming in what your expectations are. I'm not real uptight about, hey, these things all need to play exactly perfectly similar.
Yeah, I mean,
if you understand that typically the Egyptians win and they win by 35 points, and you come within 15 points, then you can be real happy with how you did.
No, I'm not sure I agree with that. I don't think that doesn't feel good.
That doesn't feel good to me at all.
Right, that doesn't feel good at all.
I want to feel like I have a chance.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that you can. There's not a lot of direct action you can take. I know you talk about we didn't kill that one that gave you the 3 gold,
Right.
but even if that's still, it would have slowed you down maybe a little bit. You probably had another one you could have built.
I did not.
Okay,
But it would, But
you would have figured out another way to get gold.
yeah, but there is kind of a. It's interesting because.
And I don't want to spend my time and my building my machine trying to tear down yours.
Right. It's interesting because in a lot of ways it feels like a solitaire game where it's just I'm building up my engine and sometimes I'm going to look at you to see what I can snipe or how I can like throw a rock at you to slow you down.
There's not a lot of interaction.
But it does feel like it's a little more frustrating to watch. Like for John, I mean, you're a good sport, but I feel like you were a little frustrated when you're like, all right, I pass, and the rest of us were still going.
And I don't mind sitting and watching. It's just like, am I playing this poorly?
Right.
You I have half as many moves to take as everybody else.
You kind
of
alluded that a little bit, and I feel like in this sort of game, it's easy to feel that source of frustration. Where when you do well, you just play more.
Yeah, and when Stephen was talking the scores out, I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe I'm not stinking the joint up quite as badly as I thought because other people have played the Romans have struggled as well. So and you would presume, we all assume that Romans conquered and attacked everything, and that's really only a short part of their history. I mean, the Roman Republic went on forever.
It's the coolest part, though.
Well, it's the part that makes all the news, but. But I really didn't have that many swords going. I had a couple of chances to get some more swords, but they weren't stunning. So I didn't.
I think you have. I think your opening hand kind of slowed you down too. I think between you and Sam had the best possible opening hand, and you had maybe not near as good of an opening hand.
And
because I did go first, and that meant that you got the last card in the draw. You did get the.
You got the first.
You got the first and the second one.
Of the draft.
Yeah.
But Sam, being second and then third, had the opportunity to grab 2 at least decent cards in addition to the faction cards.
I got to tell you, I don't remember the first 2 common cards, but I do remember that I started with that. The storage card that was generating resources. I started with that in my opening hand.
So what was getting me starting out the game, and I run through my faction deck before we started, is it's like, okay, so every single faction card needs to have a foundation before I can build it. And if you raised a card and it became a foundation on your tableau, then I would have been set. But step 1 is you gotta raise some cards to generate some resources. You gotta get some tucked underneath so that you got some deals so that your second production round. And the entire time I'm doing this, I'm like, okay, but any card I put down that's productive, I gotta eat it if I want to put a faction card on it, which gets me more powerful capabilities. The card's protected and it's worth double the points. So my initial struggle is I pretty much have to destroy in order to build. And am I missing something, or is that more or less it? I
mean, that's how it works. I think what you maybe missed is that you need to let the production sit for a turn to ramp up.
Yeah, right. But for the first turn, to be fair, everything was deals. Everything I did was deals. I think I got 1 card out that actually had production on it.
But even then, deals aren't necessarily the most productive option. I mean, they're good, especially early on.
Well, my one other production card I played.
Right.
So,
I'm trying to remember. I don't think there are any production cards that produce food. I think you have to make deals for food.
Yeah, and I have no food production.
I think I remember.
Did anybody have food production as part of their?
No, I didn't even
need food. What do you need food for?
To make deals.
To make deals.
Okay. Yeah.
And then certain cards wanted you to turn in food.
I made 3 deals, and I think I used gold for all of them.
There are some places where you need food in order to play the card.
On turn 2, I burned a card for 2 food to make deals.
Yeah. So it's asymmetric, and we're presuming imbalanced. Are we all comfortable leaping to that conclusion?
I would say anecdotally, I think it's imbalanced.
Right.
Okay, I like that.
We only have 4 plays that are
4 data points that we've recorded scores on.
So four recorded with factions plays. I mean, we got a couple more plays.
Yeah. Having played this, I do remember playing the Romans and feeling frustrated that I couldn't find any way to make them click. Like they just didn't quite work.
So
But
51st State, you're all drawing from the same.
Yeah, it's all from the
cards.
common deck.
So presumably that would be even because you're playing with the same cards. I mean, obviously somebody could pull.
But at the same time, I feel like it's also less interesting because you're all playing, and it truly is solitaire, right? I mean,
No. The same sort of you can cut in on people as Imperial Settlers.
You're all playing the same. It's just a race. You're playing with the same set of options.
So what is Imperial Settlers bringing to the table that 51st State is not?
Well, I kind of want to. I mean, if we play again, I'm not going to want to play as the Egyptians.
So
I know how the Egyptians
So
work.
variety.
Yeah, there's variety. Maybe I want to try the Romans. Maybe I want to try the
and
barbarians.
And I could see that appealing to some gamers. I can see some other gamers saying, no, I want to play the same thing over and over again, and I want to hone my skills, and I want to refine it, and I want to figure out how to really make this hum, and I should be getting 75 points a game because that's what other people get.
Well, I assume that. I mean, that's a matter of perspective.
Yep.
Right. Just like there are people out there who don't grok basic gaming conventions, like what you do on a turn, spending resources, that sort of thing. There are people who just don't understand that, and I've been so immersed in gaming for.
Well, but what
it
I'm
doesn't
saying,
register to
so
me.
what I'm saying is to the people out in TV land. All right, I think there's a certain crowd that are going to enjoy this game, and I think there's a certain crowd that are going to go, whoa, wait a minute, I wasn't expecting that. So
that said, I think we were talking earlier about the game being approachable. And I think it is approachable. I think there's a lot of complexity here.
All right, I'm in disagreement with that, but go ahead.
I think it's approachable for the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
So
40% approachable.
So I think that if you're new to the game, it's going to be approachable for much longer.
So, all right,
I don't
Because they're
think
not going to game the system.
because they're not going to be as good at gaming the system, so they're not going to ramp up as quickly.
Yeah, I think when you said that it is the complexity is emergent is a perfect way to put this because, like we said, first round took like 10 minutes, very straightforward. You could see what you had. You knew exactly how it all interacted with each other. You could still kind of keep track of your opponents and what they were doing. As we got to the third round, that's when the combos on your table are starting to get complex enough where you stop looking at your opponents and you're really kind of face down in your own.
Ordering the cards in your hand. I have to do this first. Then I'm burning this one. Then I'm getting resources.
You're
from
putting
that.
your resources in order so that
right.
I need to spend it on here and not here so that I can get these resources that then I can spend here.
Optimizing game to get everything just such a way. And by the time you're to the third round, that's getting plenty. And remember, we played for say safely 9 o'clock until 11 o'clock, and the fifth turn we more or less didn't play at all.
Yeah, we kind of truncated it.
Yeah.
Well, we played one time around the table, maybe two,
and then we kind of went, if
and
we want to.
You, Sam, probably had another 13 or 14 turns to take.
By far.
And Chris, you might have had 10 or 12.
I think I had about 10, but I think Sam probably had like 20.
So
it was just the amount of resources that he was pushing out.
And I will grant you guys in particular are very good at wringing out all of those details. I think you are too, Stephen. I don't think I'm quite as good at it, but and I certainly didn't have the complexity in front of me just because I didn't have as many cards out. But I mean, it got to be 11 o'clock, and we're like, hey, we got to call this because we got a lot of game left in front of us. So I think there was a lot of time there.
Well, frankly, I'm not sure there was a lot of game left, right? I mean, I had decisions to make, but
There were a lot of actions left.
I had a lot of actions like, all right, I'm going to spend this resource to get points, and I'm going to spend this resource to get points.
And then I'm going to spend this to make sure this card, I can do that again. So then I'll do this
that
again
brings
and
those
this
pieces
again.
back, and then I play the production. I get this.
Yeah, it just wasn't interesting.
It was solitaire game.
Right, you were doing busy work at that point.
Yeah.
So the game ends just when it gets interesting. I don't think that happened this time.
I don't think that held up.
Not this game. I've felt that way in games past, but definitely not this time around.
Yeah,
This is 2 times of me playing this game where I don't want to play it again.
Dang. And you even came into it with an open heart and an open mind.
I wanted to believe that it was going to be different, but it was almost the exact same thing. And like you, I'm sitting there going, do I really want to like push this and keep everybody else? Because Steven and John, it was just sometimes, round 4, it was just you and me.
Yeah, right. We were just going back
Saying,
and
it's your
forth.
turn. I'll do this. It's your turn. It's your turn. Boom, boom. And
we
they're just
weren't-
sitting there going for 10 minutes going, wow.
Yeah, I got 2 loads of laundry, and it was great.
Yeah, there's a certain style of game where once you start winning and doing better, you get to play more of the game than other people.
Well, right. And you just had more stuff to do.
You just get more stuff to do, and those games can be fun, but that's not my favorite kind of game.
Right. So let me ask you a question. If we found this out that you can only build one type of card, do you think that would have completely hindered?
I don't think it would have changed much for me.
Yeah, because you were building them because you had nothing else to build. That's what was in your hand.
I just would have built other cards.
Yeah.
The art's nice.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the art is...
It's cute.
The art's
Yeah.
cute.
It's a cute
I like
little
it.
game.
I mean, it was cute enough to keep me kind of engaged because, each card is got this really cute illustration about some kind of weird Japanese scene. Like I had a ninja card, and you could see where there were ninjas hiding in the background. And,
Yeah, I've
like there was a Kabuki theater card, which was pretty fun with Japan.
And the pieces are fine. It's very Euro. It's wooden pieces. There's some cardboard chits and it's cards.
Honestly, my biggest complaint with the aesthetics of this game is on the box. There's the mayor-looking guy with a shovel, and
the dude with the shovel.
I don't know. I don't like him. He doesn't fit.
Yeah.
He's common.
Well, I tell you what.
I don't like him.
Yeah.
We play games, and I think of like Diamond or a game like that where you sit there and go, you know what? I'm out of the. I didn't win. I don't have the most gems, but you know what? I've got 25 gems, so I did pretty good. I'm going to take that home. I feel
agree.
like it's a victory. Yeah. And you said it earlier. It's like, oh, I'm only 15 points behind. It's like, but to me, that's not a victory. I want to feel like I can win the game, no matter what faction or I am. But to feel like at turn 3, I felt pretty good. Turn 4, it was just. Egypt was taking over.
Right.
And then turn 5, it was just like, why are we even playing this out? Sam has won.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, if this were our game, I feel like if this were the game that we played week to week or, at least once a month.
Yeah, it's almost a lifestyle game that way.
I feel like at that point, we could kind of grok out how each of the factions works.
And there's expansion factions.
And we could make it, it would be a little more even.
Yeah, I think the point he's making is once you really learn how to make your faction rock and roll, things might be a little more even.
Sure. I mean, it's like...
But, oh, man, so speaking of the expansion factions, I have played the Atlanteans, and they are busted.
I remember the Atlanteans being pretty busted.
As a faction, they are completely busted. I haven't played the Aztecs. I don't know that anyone's played the Aztecs because half their chits are still unpunched. But yeah, there was just something about the Atlanteans that was like
they have like the gear tokens that double the production of a building or something.
Yeah, they either double the production or they allow you to take actions twice.
Something weird, and they just
and then
explode.
Some of them are it was so. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed playing it. It was very flavorful, and it made sense thematically. But
you look at the guy playing the Romans, and you're like, oh.
I feel like that game was a humongous blowout. I don't have it. Unfortunately, I don't have that one logged, so I don't remember what the score was. But I feel like when we played that one, it was like scoring in like the 170s or 180s, while everyone else is like struggling to get over 60.
Right,
okay.
and frankly, that's not a good feeling, right? When you're jumping through the points and you look over at the other side of the board and you're like, okay, so clearly we're just playing different games.
Yeah.
Right? I don't even feel good about winning because it's just...
You're playing the same game, but you just have different levels of capability. Yeah, you're right. And like I said, I'm comfortable with that. If I know that I'm playing the toughest faction, then I'll make it work.
No,
But
I should make it that
I
once
think
if you can get to this point, you win.
Yes, right. Well, right. You could do something
If the
like
Romans
that.
get to like 45 points, they win.
That would be an interesting way to change the
That'd
scoring.
be interesting.
It's a sudden death ending whenever each faction manages to make whatever their goal number is. So that might be a very interesting change, and it might end the game before you get to this sheer bookkeeping aspect of it, and might make for a much more interesting play.
It could, yeah.
But as it stands now, I think a lot of gamers are going to be frustrated saying, why would I play a faction that I clearly cannot win with, or even I have a handicap that the other players don't have.
I think it was turn 4 when I had been struggling. I think I had up to like 13 points, and Sam goes, "I build this building and I get 6 points," and then in that turn you had gotten like 20 points.
Yeah, no,
it was just like, why are we even playing when I can see like the number of buildings you have were more than what I have, and I know that they're 2 stars each.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So that's I just think caveat emptor. Understand that. I mean that's a part of this game is that they are going to be unbalanced.
So we've kind of talked about the game for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to put a number on it, Chris.
You're looking for my BG.
I'm looking for what rating would you give this using the...
What's your BGG score?
The BGG score.
There is a great gaming aspect to it. The art is nice, the print's small, but it does, thematically, it's got something to it. But I'm going to have to go barely squeaking it up there as a 7.
All right.
Okay.
John?
It's I think it's a good game with very noticeable flaws, and I think we've pretty much covered all of them. So yeah, I think this might reach a 7 on a good night.
Okay, so I think I'm going to disagree with both of you, but not too vehemently. I think the points that you both make are good points. I do think that, barring the just sheer complexity of the 5th round, I think the game is pretty approachable. I mean, if you start with round 1 and then you build up to round 2, I think, as you know, Sam said it perfectly, it's emergent complexity. You should be able to kind of keep up with it, hopefully.
I think Chris fixed the game when he said every different faction has a different, because I think what's going to happen is somebody who's playing very well is going to finish this game 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah.
Or maybe partially into the 5th. And then at that point that the sheer weight of the permutations gets taken out of the picture.
Yeah. But either way,
you got to retool the whole game for that.
Yeah. But either way, I still really enjoy this game. I would like to try it again just to kind of get a feel for one of the different factions and see how Sam does as not the Egyptians.
Give him the Romans.
Yeah, we'll see how Sam handles the Romans. I mean, that's really what it's about. Is
in a game where the Romans aren't the overpowered ones is crazy.
It's really strange.
And
maybe they are, and we haven't figured it out
because we don't bloodthirsty enough.
Because we don't have that thing that Sam has in his head that finds finds that little loophole.
So it's Sam as the Romans. You take the Egyptians, I'll take the Aztecs, and you get what's the other new faction?
Atlanteans.
The Atlanteans.
Okay, sure.
I'm in.
I get the people that never existed. What's that about?
So I mean, I enjoy the game. I can see where there have been some really interesting design decisions. So, I mean, even given how one-sided this game was, I still kind of want to give it another play. So having said all that, I mean, this is a pretty solid 7. I mean, it's not the greatest game we've ever played, but it's by far not the worst, and I would still play this one again. Sam, what are your thoughts?
I mean, basically in line with yours.
It's the old versus the young. Yes, I get to be young.
So I would definitely play this again. I enjoyed most of it, right? Up around turn 4, it started to drag. And I'm not sure what the solution... I mean, part of that solution is we just go...
3 rounds.
Well, no, we just take a long time to play games, right?
We do tend to take longer than others.
And I think that I mean, that said, I'm not sure how we could have sped this one up, but...
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's not like we were wandering off.
Right,
I mean, we were nose to the grindstone on this.
I would definitely play it again. As a different faction. because you're right. There's a good game here underneath some flaws, right?
I mean, it's award winning. Look at all the awards on the box.
Well, I got to be honest. That's kind of a negative.
I mean, it means that the game has got a good pedigree, and everyone else in the world thinks it's a great game.
Yeah, but I got to be quirky and unique, so that means I don't like it.
But I mean, Ignacy makes a lot of really great games.
I'm trying to figure out how I'm agreeing with Sam. This has never happened before.
Wait, what happened?
Well, we're in agreement. I mean, Sam and I largely.
What are we in agreement on?
That it's an okay game, but it's.
I enjoyed it. I enjoy playing the different factions. I think my biggest complaint here is that this game would have largely played the same if we played 4 solo games.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely.
And
well, except for the barbarians that kept on getting attacked. I wasn't even coming into your.
Okay, if there were a rule that said you can turn a sword, you can spend a sword and draw 1 card, the game would have been exactly the same for me.
True.
Right. And so while I like the faction design, I like the art, I like the cards, I like the way the rules play out, at the end of the day, I just don't like games where it feels like you're playing them by yourself.
Yeah, and that is definitely the case here.
Yeah.
So
I don't mind that in some games. Like I don't mind that in Wingspan. Like I like Wingspan. I know that's not the popular opinion at this table, but in a game like that,
who's disagreeing with that?
Me. I don't like Wingspan.
So one person that doesn't like Wingspan?
I didn't think John.
Oh no, I'm fine with Wingspan.
We
I
just
like
gotta-
Wingspan.
I just have the most important opinion in the room. So
Yeah. Anyway,
The most opinionated opinion.
you know,
No, Wingspan is fine. It's just not. It's not stunningly complicated, but for what it does, I think it does it beautifully.
So I would play this again.
I really like learning about the birds.
That too.
I would struggle to rate this higher than a 7.
Okay.
that's fair.
If you came in next week and said, "Oh, I got a good trade," I wouldn't shed a tear.
I would be a little disappointed.
Yeah. This one's not going right away. I want to give it another. I want to give this one another shake with a different configuration of factions.
Look, and you don't need to trade it. You just leave it at Chris's place, and eventually he has to deal with it.
And we did only play the base game. There's a whole bunch of expansions
Yeah.
that you have that we didn't play with. And
But
I remember those
they're
getting
just new
wacky.
factions, right?
No,
there's 2 new factions and two decks.
Each of our factions had about a whole nother deck worth of cards that we didn't see.
Oh my!
And technically, you're supposed to
That ought to make it easier.
Yeah.
pre-build. You're supposed to build your deck. You're not supposed to play with all 60 cards.
Because otherwise you'll dilute your deck and you won't.
Okay.
Now we're
That's
getting into Magic.
So there
where you
was
get a
there was
40 card deck
one
and-
small
Speaking of
expansion
complexity.
that we did play with, the Why Can't We Be Friends expansion, which is the one that added the volcano card
And the
it
open
also
trading.
the open trading cards,
production.
open production cards.
And I like those. Those were the cards where we actually saw interaction around the table, where I got mad at Chris because I built my open production, and he went, "Oh, I'll take that. I'll take the gold, and I have this building that says you don't benefit from this at all." Now, well, that defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, I want that extra person. I need that extra person. Come on.
And then Steven built the one that was handing out swords, so I was then going and giving him a person and getting an extra sword
Yeah,
that I
that was-
used to burn down one of Chris's buildings.
Yeah,
it was
and,
great.
You know,
Yeah,
that
I had an
that was
open production
beneficial.
too, which was destroyed.
You got
as-
an open production on like turn 4.
Yeah, there's nothing complex here.
Yeah, all right. We should probably wrap it up, though.
Okay, so that was Imperial Settlers. Love it or hate it, or love it.
Very lukewarm on this one, I feel.
Who knows? We'll let you guys decide. Thanks. John, Chris, Sam, and I thank you for joining us in conversation about Imperial Settlers. You can join the conversation by visiting our website, cellargames.com, where you can find links to our social media and Discord server. We also have a blog and a guild on BoardGameGeek. We look forward to hearing from you.